Tapes up. Just put that, drop that in your pocket. All right. Here we go. Jumani Redway, intro, take one.
Welcome. I'm Jumani Redway. Larry Wiggs is a friend of mine for 30 years, and this project is really close to his heart. We've been riding for a long time, so whatever he needs me to do, I'm gonna do it. He's helped me out on various things, so this is my chance to lend some assistance to his project. So we're gonna do this interview, we're gonna chop it up, we're gonna spit some hot fire. Here we go. 109. 109 is very important to Larry. It's very important to me too, because you know the 0 is really just a placeholder, and 19 is actually my number as well, because I'm born on the 19th. So whenever I see 109 or 1009 or anything with those two digits, that 1 and that 9, that 0 in between being a placeholder, I love it. So 109 is also a link, because whenever I see that time on the clock, I always think about my man. I always think about Larry, and October the 9th is his birthday, and this project is very, very special to him. And he didn't know it was going to have a special link to me, but it does have a special link to me too, because that 1 and that 9, I feel that, and I'm with that.
All right, picture's up, audio is up. Ready.
Framing looks good, okay. So, how you feeling today?
I'm hot. The studio is hot.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I'm feeling good.
It's the summertime too, but that's one thing, we can stay cool while it's hot.
All right.
So let's get right into it. What if you had to tell someone the most important thing in the world, but you knew they'd never believe you?
Okay. I chose that quote because I watched the movie Deja Vu starring Denzel Washington recently. And that was a very important quote from the movie. And
that was Paula Patton's first role.
Fine, Paula Patton.
Yeah, but she was fine. Yes.
And so, the answer to that question is I'll try. And so that's how I want to begin this. What I have to tell the world about 109 is, one of the most important things, for anyone to hear. And I know people aren't going to believe me, but hey, I'm going to try.
Okay. Why don't you think they'll believe in you? Just because 109 is just a number or something? You think just people will say, oh, it's just that's great, that's just a number or something? Or?
Yeah, people are, on their own path. They're on their own cycle, right? And they have their own routine, and they're about, getting what they want to get. And if I try to throw in a story, they're going to probably ask, what good is this story going to do me? How is this going to benefit me? But I think it's an interesting, entertaining story, to say the least. But it also draws upon many different schools of thought, so people could actually learn from this story and, be entertained.
Okay. What's your name?
All right. So I'm Larry Alfred Wiggs II, right? I'm moving into my identity as Larry Legend, all right? And Larry Legend is a title that some of my friends gave me, because I've done some legendary things.
Yes, indeed.
And I mean, some other people know me as Dirty Larry. So there are these different circles, you know, who know me by, you know, certain names. But you know, Larry Legend is the moniker, is the title that we're going with this project. All right. Yeah.
Okay.
But also, interestingly enough, there's also another title, Knowledge Cipher Born. Okay, that's another name, one that I'll take on because, you know, knowledge, cipher, and born are all qualities, qualitative values that have been ascribed to the numbers 1, 0, and 9. And that's what we're here for. That's what we're here to talk about, 1, 0, and 9.
So knowledge being the 1. 1. Cipher, the circle.
Yes.
The 0. And then born is the 9.
Right.
Okay.
And this is part of the philosophy of the gods and earths, or the 5 percenters, as you know, we know them as too.
So is that what 109 is, or I mean, is the book about? Well, what is 109 first off?
Okay, 109. Just like, as you said it, 109. Those are just numbers, okay? And if you look at, you know, the numbers, you could just say that it's just 3 different numbers. But what I like to do is I like to group them together. So I look at the 1 and the 0, and I group that, and I see 10, and I see the number 9. So instead of seeing 1, 0, and 9 as separate numbers, I look at 10 and 9, and then that speaks to me because that resonates, because that's my birthday, October 9th. October, the 10th month, and 9, the 9th day. All right? So, you know, what these numbers mean to me first is my birthday. But, you know, you can play with these numbers. If you're a numerologist, you can add those numbers up to get the sum of 10. And then 1 plus 0 is 1. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you're reducing the numbers down. And then that may even have another meaning within itself. If you're a numerologist, and I've already spoke about the 5 percenters, they have their meaning. So, but Jumani, at the base of all of this, it's my journey and my journey of knowledge of self. Because so many of these things that I'm speaking of right now, I had no clue about, you know, a few years ago, a few months ago.
Okay, so well, let's get to where the inspiration for the book comes from.
All right. Well, I was in Saudi Arabia, and I had a collection of moments where I saw these numbers.
Okay, now so you're in Saudi Arabia, but like, how do you actually get to Saudi Arabia? Because not many, like, you know, we're on Crenshaw right now. We're recording on Crenshaw Boulevard right
LA.
now, and you know, not that many folks who live and are born in this area have gone to Saudi Arabia. So how do you get to Saudi Arabia?
All right, so, and this is part of the legendary part. What's Larry doing in Saudi Arabia? All right. Yes, we're in Los Angeles, and it was 2007 when I found myself unemployed right here in LA. And I was a temporary employee, you know, doing that for many months, but I needed a job to sustain myself. It wasn't working. And a friend of mine told me there are jobs in Asia, so go to Asia, teach English in Asia. And I moved to Asia, specifically South Korea. I worked there for nearly 10 years. There's the number 10 again. And I parlayed my experience from South Korea into a job in Saudi Arabia. By the time I had enough experience in South Korea, they welcomed me in Saudi Arabia to say, come and teach here. So that's how I got to Saudi Arabia. I was teaching English.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so you're in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
You said you've been there for a couple of months at that time?
I really don't remember when it happened, But I had been in Saudi Arabia, and I was in my bedroom taking a nap, and quite literally, this image popped in my head. All right? I saw a red background, and I saw these numbers in white, 10 and 9.
Okay.
Now, the year was probably 2016. It may have been 2017. And up until that point, I left Los Angeles in 2007, and between 2007 and 2016 or 2017, I had a number of encounters, experiences where I saw these numbers 10 and 9 or 10-9, and they were just, it was a constant, it was gnawing at my brain, like, hey man, pay attention to these numbers, pay attention. And so I collected these moments. I took pictures to make a record, because now that I'm telling this story, I have record, I have evidence of what I experienced, because I knew if I just talked about these things without any proof, people would be like, you know, show me something.
Okay. So how long have you been noticing 109?
Let's say 2004. I think it started in 2004, because that year I bought my first car, 2004. It was a white Saturn, and the license plate, it was a personalized license plate, and I put, 10-9 LAW2 on my license plate. And that was the first time that I was calling, or I was manifesting something about my birthday. And I was just saying, hey, my birthday's important. 10-9, that's on my license plate. That's my car, So that was the very first time. But since then, since 2004, there have been moments that I'll get into in a minute. Yeah, so it's been literally since 2004.
Okay. So, 2004, you started noticing these things, and you've been continuing just to notice them ever since.
No, I wouldn't say I started noticing 2000. I started noticing 10 and 9 since 2004. I think that was the first time I recognized,
Okay.
or I brought something came out of me, because I put it on my car, on my license plate. Now, what happened is, in 2007, I moved to South Korea.
Yeah.
So when I moved to South Korea, that's when everything started happening. Because I'll give you an example. The first friend I made in South Korea was my neighbor, Luke, who is from New Zealand. Coincidentally enough, Luke and I share the same birthday, 10-9. All right? So that was me flying to Korea, an unknown, because I had never traveled internationally before that. That was a complete leap of faith on my part. And my neighbor, my next door neighbor is a guy who shares my same birthday. So, but at that time, it was just, hey, that's a neat coincidence. That's all.
So you lived in South Korea. How long did you live there?
I lived in South Korea for 9 years and some change.
Okay. Then you moved from there to Saudi Arabia?
Yes, right.
Okay. And then did you after, when did you come home? How did that happen? Or did you go anywhere from Saudi Arabia before you came back here to LA?
For the most part, while I lived in South Korea, if I had vacation time, I would come home here to Los Angeles, and then I would. So after about 9 years of doing that, I was hired in Saudi Arabia, and I moved to Saudi Arabia, where I lived for 2 years and about 3 months. Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, so there's this question about Oman. I was trying to segue into Oman.
Okay. Well, I can tell you a little bit more about Korea before we get to Oman.
Okay.
Because Korea is where 109.10.9 developed. All right.
Okay.
10.9 developed for me in Korea because yes, the first friend I made had, we shared the same birthday. But then when our birthday, was around the corner on near October 9th, I learned that October 9th is also a national holiday in Korea. Now, anytime your birthday shares a national holiday, it's a great coincidence because everyone has that day off, right? And so, some people have their birthdays on Christmas, and what do they say? Double the presents, right? If you're a kid, you're like,
I don't know. There's some people that I know got half the presents.
Okay.
Growing up in the hood, at least they tell a short change. Anyway.
All right.
But go ahead.
Well, in my case, October 9th, rolled around while I was living in Korea, and I got the day off from work. So that, for me, that was really great. I remember working 6 days a week. They were working me, man. My first year. See, I didn't know anything about Korea and how they were working.
Hey, real quick, this is not on the question list. I've been meaning to ask you.
Yeah.
I saw that movie Parasite, and I thought about you all throughout the whole fucking movie. Right?
Yeah.
So, I know you've seen it.
Yes.
What was it like seeing that movie? You know what I mean? With your experiences, living in Seoul and doing that kind of work. Maybe not exactly what's happening in the movie, obviously, but
that movie.
Teaching English, though.
That movie was extremely accurate. Yes, it's very surprising, but it was so real, extremely accurate. And what else?
So just your pedigree being from America, knowing a little bit of the culture because of the Taekwondo and that kind of thing, that all kind of I bet that made a masterful resume for you.
Yeah, I think so, but sometimes it was just a matter of me being in the right place at the right time. Because you mentioned Seoul, that's the capital, and I never lived in Seoul.
Right.
It's kind of true, man. When other Asians, if we're not of the right, and we go to Korea, we don't always find ourselves in the capital with the best jobs. Okay?
So there's racism in Korea.
You don't think?
I'm asking. I didn't
Oh man, bruh, that is a topic and a discussion, a deep discussion, to really get into.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. So it really is true. It just everywhere you go, the darker you are, the more difficult it is.
Sure. I think of DJ Quick's lyrics. Years ago, Quick was informing us, informing me way before I had ever been to Korea. He said on the song with a Juvenile Committee, he said, and then you go to the swap meet to buy your gear. Korean people don't acknowledge the fact that you're here, as if you don't even matter. And then he continues and said more. And I found that is kind of true. If you go to Korea...
What album is that off of? Is that one of the first two albums?
Juvenile Committee, that was a whole group that Quick produced.
Oh, is that the one with Mossberg and No?
No, Mossberg was.
No, that was
Mossberg
like connected or something.
Yeah, that was the connected project.
Right, that was a connected project. So this is like an earlier project.
Oh yeah, this is much earlier.
Oh, okay.
But it's true. It's like they don't acknowledge you because you're not Korean, you know. And you go to Korea and you discover that, like, if you know, I tried to bridge the gap by learning Korean, and you know, when I watched Parasite, I realized I don't speak Korean.
Wow.
It's, you know.
You had to watch the subtitles?
Sure. I mean, you know, I can, with Korean, I can communicate my needs, my wants, you know. I can have a very, I guess, shallow conversation, but, you know, when...
That's how I'm in Spanish.
You know.
Okay. Oh, okay, so you're proficient. You're not necessarily fluent.
Right.
Got it. Okay, I always thought you were fluent for some reason. Well, you know, it's an assumption that you make because they say when you live somewhere for a year, you know, like that's usually the amount of time it takes to gain fluency. At least in Spanish, that's how it works. But okay.
Well, Korean is surprising. It's deceptively easy. It's deceptively. I mean, you look at it and it looks completely foreign. Once it's explained to you, you can learn to read Korean in between 15 minutes and an hour. It's very easy, but mastering the language takes, you know, years. Okay, but the basics you figure that out so quickly, man. It's unbelievable. Yeah. So I spent a lot of time in Korea, and speaking of, you know, my resume, you know, I mentioned, you know, my aunt, Florence Griffith Joyner, was an Olympian and had won, you know, 3 gold medals there. And that helped me win the Koreans over in a sense, because they said, "Oh yeah, we remember your aunt," especially if they were of the older generation. If they were younger, of course, they would be like, "I don't know who you're talking about." Yeah, but the older generation were like, "Yeah, sure, come work with me. I'd be happy. I'd be proud to have you." Have Flojo's nephew, you know, working for me. So it did help me. It did help me, you know.
Okay. So you're in Saudi Arabia, but you're living in Oman, right, for a little while.
Okay, now, yeah, you're conflating. You're bringing 2 experiences together.
Oh, sorry.
No. So okay, South Korea. I lived there for 9 years and some change, and then I got out of there.
Right. You had a better offer, right, in Saudi Arabia?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
What Busta Rhymes say? Getting that Arab money. And so I moved to Saudi Arabia, and so things progressed in Saudi Arabia. And then after I lived in Saudi Arabia for 2 years and 3 months, came back to Los Angeles, and then I had another tour of duty, so to speak.
Okay.
And then I went to Oman. All right.
Now, did you have a choice to go back to Saudi, and you chose Oman instead, or like how did that happen?
You know, I think it was after I, you know, got the experience of living there, I didn't want to go back. Korea, I really tried hard. I really tried to assimilate into their culture, learn the language, and I did my best.
Was there more pussy in Korea or in Saudi Arabia?
You just gonna ask me? Well,
you can edit it out.
Well, that's
okay,
where.
I'll ask the question again.
See,
what was the any kind of romantic or sort of nightlife like in Korea versus Saudi Arabia?
Oh my gosh! All right. So, all right. To answer your question, there were plenty of things happened in South Korea. You know, I mean, Saudi Arabia. If you do anything wrong, they're chopping things off. Your hand, your head. You know.
You can get your hand chopped off now, still. I thought that was just sort of like one of those old kind of, stuff they used to do like back in the day.
the way it was explained to me, I never saw a public execution. The way it was explained is you'd have to have done something really bad. So if you were a thief and you stole something one time, it's not like your hand's getting chopped off. But if you were a repeat offender, then they're like, you know what, we have to do something, let's chop his hand off, and that's what's done. So it really depends upon the offense, the level of the offense.
So
but
they don't get a lot of repeat offenders.
No. But you know, it's serious. When you fly in, on the customs card, it tells you if you're smuggling drugs, the penalty is death. If you're doing X, Y, and Z, the penalty is death. It's clear. Like, what other country welcomes you like that? Hi, welcome to our country. If you do this, we will kill you.
Wow. So if you call it a joint, you know, like just in your luggage, you forgot that you had it or something like that.
You don't want to play with them. You definitely don't want to play with them. Saudi Arabia is not the country to play with. So there was plenty of you know, good times in South Korea, and if from where we lived in Saudi Arabia, we had to go across the border. And so the border town for partying, which was the Middle East Las Vegas, is the country Bahrain. And they get it in over there, you know.
Okay, so basically for you to sort of let your hair down, so to speak,
Oh, yes.
you know what I'm saying, you gotta go to Bahrain.
Right. Yeah.
That's where, so that's God, so that's where all the Saudi Arabians go to like to turn up.
Saudis, Americans, the Brits, yeah, anyone. So you can't have alcohol in Saudi Arabia. So what you do is you go across the border and you buy your alcohol legally in Bahrain, because Bahrain, everything's available, from women to booze. I mean, that's about all I.
So what's the main difference that you experience from the Bahrainian people than the Saudis?
Well,
because there's people living in Bahrain all the time, right?
Okay, good question. In Saudi Arabia, I couldn't talk to women. You can't talk to women in Saudi Arabia. If she is not a blood relative, if she's not your wife.
Or your mom.
Okay, that's blood relative, so yes.
Right. Blood relative or your...
Blood relative or your spouse?
Or your spouse.
If she's none of those, cancel that. Don't even try to talk to her. in Oman and in Bahrain, yes, you could talk to women. Let me see. I know for sure in Oman, I talked to women. Bahrain, man, I have to really think about that, because I didn't have a lot of interaction with Bahraini.
But you can talk to them if you want to.
Yeah. Saudi Arabia, it's
now is in Bahrain. Is it, for example, I went to Argentina, right? So in their culture, like prostitution is somewhat legal, or I guess it's. So I walked into this bar, and basically I just noticed there's a lot of fine women in this bar.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And, sure.
And it didn't seem to be a lot of competition, you know? like you go, the other, regular bars is like, ratio is 50-50. This other bar, I'm 19, mind you, I don't really speak, Spanish the same way I do now. I haven't studied abroad yet. So I just spoke, hello, how are you, like that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like real basic, traveler, lingo or whatever. So I don't know, the culture that much. I'm just out kind of on my own as a traveler at nighttime. So I'm just walking around. So I see these regular bars, ratios 50-50, but there's like these other bars, and there's like these super fine women, dressed up, like super, slutty or whatever. And there's like not a lot of dudes there. So I'm like, well, shit, I gotta check this out.
Right.
My chances of success seem a lot, more likely in a place like this. So I go in, and there's like a procedure, I didn't like see, I didn't read or anything, but basically the whole situation is you can talk to a girl like just by the bar or whatever, just, if you like go up to them. But if you want to like seriously talk to them, you gotta like take them, sit them down and buy them a drink.
Oh.
Now, when you buy a drink, like your drink might be like $5, you know, $10.
Right. And theirs is 30.
Yes.
Oh man.
And so it wasn't until that moment that's what I realized, like, okay, this is the procedure.
Yeah.
This is how they do it. Like, there's nothing like, hey, you know, I'm the hoe, you know, how much to hit it. Like, it's not sort of like that. It's more like, hey, these women are here. If you like one of them to really talk to them, this is how it is. So it's like, I was a long-winded way of saying, like, so are there like rules in Bahrain, or is it just sort of like you can see a girl on the street, possibly just talk to her, and just sort of like go to a place to like talk to them?
Okay. Bahrain, in particular, is when I was there. Now, I don't think it's changed much. It's only been, I was last there maybe 2018, 3 years ago. Bahrain is overrun with prostitutes from Thailand, China. I think that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But Thailand, the Thai women, okay, everywhere. Then they have Chinese, lots of Chinese women.
And they don't have to wear like head wrap or hijab or?
No.
Okay.
No. Foreign women are not required to do that. The abaya, the what is that? The robe to cover their body. They do have to wear the abaya when they're going into a store, but they don't have to cover their head. Now, those same women in Saudi Arabia must use the abaya, cover their bodies, and if they choose to cover their hair, then they can do that in Saudi Arabia. So Bahrain is more liberal. You can absolutely talk to the women there, but in Saudi Arabia you can't hands off all the time.
Okay.
Now, with regard to the arrangements in Bahrain, you have hip hop clubs. There are hip hop clubs in Bahrain. You just go in there and you can find hundreds of Thai women. And all you have to do is make arrangements with her individually, and leave the club with her. All right. Okay. So you mentioned it, the way that you described it. You know, a club with many women inside, and you start buying them drinks. In Bahrain, you don't have to pay for any drinks. You just have to talk to her directly and make the arrangements. Yeah. But I was in Turkey. Okay. See, right now we're getting a mixture of Larry Legend, all the travel talk, but also Dirty Larry. You know, what was Larry doing in all these countries? Okay. But here's the thing. In Turkey, I went into a club, and there were all of these beautiful women from Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. There's another, Kiev. Is that Uzbekistan? Ukraine, from the Ukraine. All right. Beautiful women, and it looks like a strip club. They're all walking around the elevated, like a table in the middle of the floor. You beckon one over, she'll sit with you. Her drinks cost $30, yours cost $5, and her drinks are so tiny. It's a sip, and then she wants more. It's a sip. Bruh, I go in there with two guys from the Emirates, some Emirati fellas. They met me at a McDonald's, at a local McDonald's. They said, "Come with us, buddy. We'll take you to a nice club." I said, "All right, man, you guys look harmless." I go into the club with these guys. I see this scene, beautiful Ukrainian women, beautiful Russian women, whatever, sit down. They start ordering drinks. At the end of the night, the bill came to $3,300. My portion, $1,100. I was ordering drinks for her thinking, I can afford like $100 to spend, thinking her drinks are like $5 or $6 like mine. No, she was tossing them back. And I was just like, sure. You want more? No problem.
Oh, they didn't tell you how much they were.
They didn't tell me.
They told you how much they were.
No.
Okay.
So they got me. So that was a wild. I thought I was in for it.
$1,000.
I came out of like $500 or $600, and
the Emory guys helped you out.
They told me. I said I can't get any more money out. I can't right now. And the guy says to me, "Oh, my friend, you should have just asked me. We would have covered you." I'm like, "Really? That's mighty generous of you, and you didn't speak up, you know." So I really don't know if
So
they were
okay, so it's kind of weird. Like they gave you the impression they might have helped you out, but they didn't actually help you out. But
yeah, they said.
But they gave you the impression if you had spoken up a little bit more that they might have done it. Or
What is that from House Party, Kid and Play, or you know, kid gets in the fight, play, and Martin Lawrence said, "Oh, we had your back. We would have had your back." And he's like, "Yeah, where's my back? Way back, you know." So that was kind of what it was. Man. There were no help, man.
okay, so man, talking about Turkey, man. I had a thing with a Turkish girl. She was incredible. She looked like Sade. She was fucking. She was dope.
All right.
She was dope.
So it would be a moment like that where I would be at the club, and for whatever reason I would check my phone, check my watch, and there it was. It'd be like 10:09, p.m. It'd be like 1:09 a.m. It would whatever, and I would see these numbers 10 and 9, and yeah.
Okay, so you did a lot of traveling when you were in Saudi. You went to Turkey.
Oh man.
You went to
Yes.
you went to Oman.
I did go to Oman. Before living in Oman, I did travel from Saudi Arabia to Oman, yes.
Okay. Where else did you travel?
I went to Ethiopia. Where else did I go? Egypt.
How did the people in Ethiopia and Egypt treat you?
Ethiopia was cool. They thought I was Ethiopian. So they were just like, they spoke to me in Amharic, and I'm like, bruh, I don't know. Egypt was cool. I was on a tour, and as long as my tour guide kept me from the hard press, the dudes were like, come buy my rugs, come buy this, buy. Keep me away from those dudes. I was cool. So I just saw the sights in Egypt, and didn't have a lot of,
Is it like it is in the United States? Like the Egyptians present themselves as like white, but then you go to the streets and it's like dark people everywhere?
Oh yeah. Everywhere that you go, it's that way. In Costa Rica, I remember I posted this and you responded about this. We went. My Airbnb host drove me to the town square, and there was a statue there. We looked up at the statue. I looked at the face of the statue. I said, "Man, that's a brother." And it was amazing. It was like, Costa Rica specifically has like traditionally presented itself as a white country, but the roots, the history is there. Like they literally tried to present themselves as white, but they have so many African roots. It's like, come on now. Argentina is terrible. I haven't been to Argentina, but I learned the history that, they just tried to, complete genocide of all of the African influence just to create, a little white, country.
Well, that's very interesting. Because I don't know a lot about the history of Argentina. I've been there before, but that was when I was young, and I won the trip. It wasn't like I just sort of chose to go there. I had an opportunity, and I took the opportunity to go. But one of the things that they talked about is that there's a big like German, or no, not German, or just somewhat German and Italian influence in Argentina, because that's where they fled.
Exactly.
After World War II.
Right.
The Nazis came down to Argentina, and then, and you see a lot of that influence. There's Manu Ginobili, you know what I mean? That like there's that Italian, sort of influence that still kind of permeates in Argentina. There's a lot of people are fairer skinned there, but you can definitely tell there's like a more indigenous side to it that you don't really know about.
I mean, it's.
I got that impression.
The fact is, we all come from Africa. In particular, East Africa. And if your country doesn't own up to that fact, I mean, then all of that is just a bunch of, BS. So whatever they try to do to whitewash, their history and whatever, no. The fact is that we all come from Africa, East Africa. So,
Okay. So, I interrupted you. You went to Egypt, you went to Ethiopia, Turkey. Where else you went?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. In 2017, I traveled to 17 countries. And I flew from Saudi Arabia. I flew all the way back to here, back to America. And then I went down south. Peru, Cuba, Mexico. I stopped in Panama. Those were remarkable. Oh, I'm wearing Che Guevara's t-shirt, okay? I bought this t-shirt in Thailand, and I'm wearing this shirt because 10-9, all right? I'm in Cuba. I'm in Cuba now, right? Havana, Cuba. I'm reading about Che Guevara's life. I open the book. I'm in a room, much like this room. There are no windows. It's late at night, and within the first couple of pages, they give the biography of Che's life, and it says, on October 8th, Che was captured, and then the following day, he was killed. The following day, October 9th, from October 8th, it was October 9th. So I'm sitting in a room with no windows in Havana, Cuba, reading about Che Guevara's life, and there I am, I'm revisiting, I'm re-encountering 10-9, and I'm like, why is this happening? Why does this keep happening? Because I could have been reading a book about Scooby-Doo. I could have been reading a book about, President Obama. I could have been reading a book about anyone, but I was actually reading a book about one of the leaders in Cuba. Now, he was originally, Che Guevara was Argentinian, okay? But his spirit and his legacy permeate the island of Cuba. So it only felt right that, sort of his spirit was like visiting me in that moment. So my travels, took on a different level of significance when I said, it was like, why I am traveling the globe, because I had the money at that time. I was earning that Arab money in Saudi Arabia. And I did ask myself, like, why am I doing this? I could just, why don't I just chill out, stack my money and then, do something else, just focus somehow. But I was just too anxious, too eager, and I was traveling to so many countries. I traveled to 17 countries in 2017.
Yeah, well, it makes a lot of sense to me. You were in a foreign country, which is cool, but I'm guessing, you're probably, you don't really know, because you're not really from there, you don't quite know everything that there is to do, and that kind of thing, and so you're living a life that's sort of sheltered in a way, like you have your job, you have your things, you have your freedoms to go and to do certain things, but like having a real sort of community, something that you probably don't have, and so you spent over a decade, doing that, and so like even though your passport got stamped several times, so you got used to traveling. So it's just like, hey, I'm used to this. Get out there and see what else is out there.
It took me a long time, because those 9 years that I was in South Korea, I always figured that I would travel, but I didn't have the time, I didn't have the money. And so I was catching up for lost time.
Right.
I was like, yo, you put me in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is near Africa. It's near Asia. It's near Europe. I could take a short trip, less than 4 hours, and get to those parts of the country. I'm like, man, let's go. And
Yeah, Leonard said that he was in Egypt, and
Yes.
you reached out to him, like,
Yes.
yo, like, let's hook up. And
I was off Egypt Air, and because they had a plane crash, and then I saw him board an Egypt Air flight, and I'm like, all right, you know, if it's good, if it's cool with Leonard, then let me go and check it out. So like a few months after his trip, you know, I mustered the courage to take my trip. I flew on Egypt Air too, so yeah. Yeah.
okay, so you went to 17 countries, but you end up back in Oman, right?
Okay. Yeah, so all the time I spent in South Korea, I didn't save a lot of money. I mean, I broke even, right? Saudi Arabia, I was able to stack. Got my money up, and I got my travel up, and so I left the country, I was up. I still needed to work, still needed to earn some money, just because, yeah.
I saw that movie Not Without My Daughter when I was younger, and okay, it's like the Sally Field movie. I was real young. It was, you know, when you're trying to spend the night over someone's house and they sort of make you do things, you know what I mean? Like, you know, when you're over there, you know. So anyway, I had to watch this movie. But anyways, this movie. So like Sally Field's trying to get out of like this, you know, Muslim country, you know, because
Really?
yeah. So like she's like this American woman. And then she marries this like Muslim dude, and he's all like super, you know, smooth and suave in the United States. And he's like, yeah, you know, you're gonna come back with me to my country. You know?
Oh.
And she's like, well, yeah. She's like, yeah, I'll treat you like a queen. Da da da. And so when she gets there, like she doesn't realize it, but she has no rights. You know,
Yeah.
and he starts beating the shit out of her, you know, and starts like, you know, abusing her. And then they got a daughter, right? So like she has chances to leave like on her own.
Yeah.
But she doesn't want to leave without her daughter. So like that's the whole thing. It's like not without my daughter.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But so yeah, it's about like the struggles that she goes through trying to leave like this country. So because I saw that movie when I was young, whenever I think of people being in like Muslim countries and they try to leave, I always think it's like hard.
Man. Well.
So sorry to interrupt you guys.
No.
That was just what was coming through.
You know, to the credit of our nation, I worked. Excuse me for a second. Let me see if I have some. I don't have any. Searching for some chapstick.
I got some. You need some.
What's you got?
You got it, right?
Oh, okay. Use my finger.
Yeah.
Let me get that.
Yeah.
Damn. Alright, cool. Yeah. So we got another hour here. So
Yeah.
Sally Fields.
So yeah, so you were able to leave.
Oh,
You said like the government, like you able, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, we had I was working for an American company. So I was a contractor out there, and that was good. Lifestyle was plush, you know, paychecks were fat, you know, the vacation time was plentiful. So
Okay, so like
it was cool.
When you had an itch, you could just go to Bahrain.
Exactly. That was the sweet part.
How far was it to go to like an hour? 2
Oh
hours?
man, it was 30 minutes.
Oh,
Bruh,
okay.
it's like what?
Going to Pasadena.
LA to Pasadena, okay?
Okay.
It's that
Long
simple.
Beach.
But Jumani, there's a border.
Right.
And when all of those cars, everyone's trying to leave Saudi.
Got it.
So a 30-minute trip,
2 hours.
4 hours. Every weekend. You had to get there early in the morning on a weekday.
In order for it to be like less than that?
Yes, in order to get over in 30 minutes with no traffic. I think I heard them say, you know, on CNN, like 1 million people cross, I think, per month. That's kind of crazy, you know. Maybe annually.
It's like Vegas on steroids.
Yes.
LA to Vegas on steroids.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
You know?
Interesting. Okay.
But let me see. So the Cuban, yeah, Che Guevara, traveling, 10-9 was popping up. See, in South Korea, I was waking up. Okay, I had already had my buddy Luke. I knew Luke and Luke and I shared the same birthday. Then I discovered that 10-9 is a national holiday. It's also my birthday. That's great. Then I started noticing that I would check my watch at 10:09 or 1:09. It was a habit, and it was not intentional. It would just be, what time?
Happens to me all the time too. Actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Seriously. Or also 2/19, for my birthday.
Exactly.
But yeah, like or 11/19.
And
Right.
when
but like 1:09, 10:09, and then for me personally, like 2:19 or 11:19. I always happen to catch those numbers.
And that's why this story is so relatable, because the more I talk about it, the more people are saying, hey man, I don't really mess with that numerology stuff, but my boy told me about it, and I keep seeing these numbers now, and I'm like, okay. He's like, I talked with this one dude, and he said, my phone, I've got pictures of all of these moments when I keep seeing these numbers. These are my numbers. I went in, when I bought my car in January, I was talking to the finance guy, and I was telling him about 10-9, and he was like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. My numbers are, 12/30. That's my birthday, December 30th. And I'm like, okay.
Oh yeah, well 12:30 is a common like meeting time, so yeah. Yeah, common lunchtime, yeah. So yeah, for him that's probably pretty good.
So
I just happened, just by mistake, I caught 2:19 on February 19th.
yeah.
So I was like, okay, I gotta take a little screenshot.
Yeah, exactly. Don't let those moments, pass
Yeah,
by.
I wasn't like intending on it. I wasn't waiting at 2:18. I happened to just check my phone and it was like 2:19. So yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I was in Colombia, Medellin, Colombia. What's his name?
Pablo.
Yes, Pablo's, town. I go to sleep at 9 o'clock, and I just happen to wake up out of the blue. There was no loud noise to wake me up. There was nothing. I just woke up. I grabbed my cell phone. I didn't grab my cell phone 5 minutes after I woke up. I didn't grab it, 30 minutes later. I grabbed it as soon as I woke up. The room was pretty dark, and I was like, let me see what time it is. I grabbed my phone. I wake up at exactly 1:09 a.m. And I'm like, 109? Those are the numbers again, So from Korea, waking up and having these moments with those numbers, to traveling to, 17 countries and still seeing the numbers. I really thought something was wrong with me. I'm like, why do I keep fixating on these numbers? But it wasn't until Oman that I realized you're not fixating on these numbers. Like, these numbers are specifically calling you. They are speaking to you. And I imagine that it was all a matter of time. It was all a matter of time before, what those numbers were calling me for, came to reveal themselves, or the meaning, came to reveal itself.
Okay. How long did you live in Oman?
I was only there for like 7 months. I wanted to live long. I wanted to be there longer. Oman's a beautiful country, and very cool, very relaxed. They're like the hippie Muslims, peace loving, and it's all good. They don't have any problems with any other countries.
It's true.
So you just go there, chill. They have a beautiful, they have mountains. You can hike the mountains. They have beautiful beaches. You can swim at the beaches, swim farther into the ocean. And then
Arabian Sea?
The Gulf of Hormuz, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
but all that area.
Waves or just kind of like still waters?
You get some waves. I can't speak for. No, it's not like Hawaii. It's definitely not Hawaii.
Yeah. But well, okay, like Jamaica is like very still waters.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I haven't been to Jamaica.
Yeah. So like it's the Caribbean Sea.
Okay.
So like we're in the Pacific Ocean, so it's like waves,
Okay.
surfing. You know
Okay.
what I mean? And so like we grew up waves, thinking like beach waves.
Yeah.
You know, and then yeah, if you go to other places and there's the beach, there's
Yeah.
sand, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's not necessarily like waves like that.
Yeah. So they also have the desert. So if you want to get a desert experience where you see the sand dunes and all of that, and go, riding the dunes, on a four-wheel ATV, you can have that experience. You can have all those experiences in a very short distance. You maybe have to drive like 30 minutes, or 30 miles or so. But in Saudi Arabia, if you want those experiences, you literally have to travel like hours to get from one region of Saudi Arabia to the other. Saudi Arabia has all of that stuff, but yeah.
Where's Oman located in relative to Saudi?
Oman borders Saudi Arabia. It also borders the United Arab Emirates, and it also borders Yemen. And yeah. And
Did you go to Yemen?
You can't, as an American. I mean, I think I would need some different types of visas and
like
permission.
family or something like that.
You'd have to have family. You'd have to have you have to be a journalist or something, and get all those. But a normal American it'll be very difficult getting into Yemen. Extremely difficult. I'll tell you.
Because I know you went to Dubai, so you've been to UAE.
Oh, Dubai is easy. Oh yeah, Dubai is easy. But it was difficult for me to get into Oman. I'm at LAX, and I have a Venezuelan and a Colombian airline ticket person. These two guys, one Venezuelan, one Colombian. And they tell me, you can't go to Oman as an American unless you have, a visa, etc., and all this paperwork. And I'm like, Oman is a country that's open to Americans, and you get the visa on arrival. And they told me, you're not getting on this plane unless you have a visa. So it was a bunch of BS.
Conflicting information.
Yeah.
Made
So
your heart race.
I had only less than an hour to get on the plane, and they're telling me so I get on the phone, and I spend like $300
Calling to get the assurance that you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I called, but I paid for a visa that I did not need, and then I also paid for a plane ticket to prove that I wasn't going to become a refugee and live there. You had to prove that you were flying out of the country at some future date. So I needed those two things in order to board the plane to get to Oman.
Okay, so you did actually need some other stuff.
That's what those two guys told me I needed.
But
once I didn't need any of that. That was what that airlines, said to get on this plane. This is what you're going to need. I didn't need any of that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Now, why did you live in Oman?
Again, I was teaching English. I had another contract, and and I was. By this time, I'm like, yo, I'm teaching English. I can do this. Let's see the world. Let's keep traveling. Why stay in one country and teach English? Let's go to another country, see another part of the globe. So Oman was the fourth country that I was going to teach in, because I did work in Peru for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. In between Korea, Saudi Arabia, and Oman, there was a 2-week stint in Peru. Yeah.
Which country had the finest girls?
Finest girls, man.
Now, I know maybe Peru doesn't count because only over 2 weeks, but Oman,
Well,
Saudi, and South Korea.
like the Muslim countries, you can't see the women.
So is South Korea by default?
Japan by default.
Oh, you taught in Japan too?
No, I didn't teach in Japan.
Oh.
But see, we were talking about this before. The Koreans, as a brother in Korea, Crenshaw. as a brother in South Korea, you know, sometimes you got a headache just being there, and you had to get away. And my outlet was Japan, and I was really impressed with Japan. You know, right here on Crenshaw, this is where the Japanese, you know, they had a stronghold on Crenshaw. The Japanese community had a stronghold here. They have homes. You can still see the Japanese influence.
Well, because actually, like, black people didn't really come here on Crenshaw until like the 40s and the 50s. But like back in like the 20s and 30s, black people were on Central Avenue.
Yes.
You know, not necessarily Crenshaw Boulevard.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I was in Japan.
I mean, Koreatown is straight up north of Crenshaw, to the very north.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crenshaw, Western, you know, all that. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I was in Japan, and I met a guy named Goody. Goody's in his 60s. He owns a dive bar, and he's recorded. He lived right here in Crenshaw, and so he went to all of the R&B shows during the 60s and 70s, and he would record the shows. And he was a big James Brown fan. He lived here for many years, and then he moved back to Japan, opened up his dive bar, and he has literally the original records, original recordings of, you know, live shows, like right here in LA in the Crenshaw district. I pop in there because the one thing I love about Japan is, like, they're just so interested in others. They're not
island, so yeah.
They're not xenophobic as the Koreans. Like, I literally I walked up on a Korean girl and she jumped back when she saw me. She's like, you know, this dude, you know, he's not Korean, he's some other. But I go in Japan and no one even notices me. They don't even pay attention. And I walk into Goody's place and I'm like, it's a James Brown soul R&B place. I'm like, I'm definitely going in there. I go in there, I meet Goody. He's like, where are you from? I'm like, I'm from LA. He's like, do you know Crenshaw? I'm like, do I? Peace and love to Goody's, man. Goody is a good dude, man. So I really love the Japanese and the Japanese women. I mean, literally, they say that Japan is the black man's heaven.
Okay.
They say it.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because real quick, we got some more questions to get to, but I'm in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Price is Right trip. So Hawaii, very Asian.
You want a trip on Price is Right to Hawaii?
You didn't know this?
No. I remember this. I remember, but I hadn't thought about it. I'm like, oh.
So yeah, I'm in Hawaii.
Dude.
I'm 19. Andrew's with me.
Yeah.
You know, we're just doing touristy stuff. Hawaii's very Asian.
Yes.
Right?
Oh yeah.
So, but there's not that many black Americans. And, you know, you can definitely tell, like, the difference between the black Americans and then the sort of Hawaiian black people.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so we see this guy, he's like, got a black American kind of like a look or whatever. We was chopping it up with him. And he's like, oh yeah, you know, I was in the service in Japan, you know, I live here now, but then when I was in Japan, I was just knocking down bitches left and right. Left and right. And like he had like a little, it wasn't like, I don't know if it was a black color or whatever, but he had like a little book.
Yeah.
And there's like a thing where in Japan, thumbnail sized pictures of people, it's like a thing, you know, to give away. So he had all these pictures, all these little thumbnail size pictures of these girls that he knocked down. He was like, yeah, fuck her, threesome with these girls, this, that. And I'm 19, this guy's, you know, twice, maybe 3 times my age, you know, probably twice my age or whatever, and, you know, I don't know this guy or whatever, so I don't know if I can believe him, but he's speaking with such, you know, like matter of fact sensibility. It was just like it made an impression on me, you know. And he was like, man, all you gotta do is go to Japan. You just go to Japan.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, like just go. Like,
Yeah.
just telling you, just use it. And I remember him saying that. So, but yeah, you just reminded me of that.
Absolutely. It is, it's true. It's true.
And he was like, they'll just throw themselves at you. They'll just be so interested in you just because you're there. Like,
See, as a brother growing up in Los Angeles, we are limited. You know, it seemed that way back then. It seems that way even today. But, you know, we are not the object of desire, and we're not even, no one is even curious about us. We are, they want to avoid us. But when you get to these other countries, you find that there's a different sensibility. There's a different, there's a level of curiosity and a level of freedom. I mean, the brothers who traveled, during the World War I or World War II to Europe had a very different experience, and a very different experience of freedom, right? There was no discrimination. There was, so the brothers got it in. And when they came back here, then confronted with all of this discrimination and stuff, it's just, so the key here is travel is important. It helps you free the mind.
yeah, I mean, I even remember as a kid just traveling out of LA, and it's so interesting the way that people intake you, being from Los Angeles. People are just so much more interested in you in other places, wanting to know.
You're from LA? Wow,
Yeah.
What's it like,
Yeah. It's really cool being from LA going to other places.
Yeah.
For sure. I remember I was in Oregon going to graduate school, and I'm just nonchalantly talking to these kids about how I remember when Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style came out. And the look on some of these kids' faces, they were so mesmerized. They were like, wow, you were a teenager growing up in the LA area when Doggy Style came out? Like, wow, what was that like? And same thing with the riots. It was like, wow, like you were living in Los Angeles when the riots happened? Like, wow. It was great. For you and me, it's like, yeah, that was on April 29th, 1992.
Right.
We were in school or whatever we were, and shit just popped off.
Right.
Man. So speaking of, events, Los Angeles events,
Yeah.
what's the connection with 109 and with what happened on March 31st, 2019?
March 31st, 2019 is the day on which Ermias Joseph Askedon, aka Nipsey Hussle, was murdered right down the street. And that event, reverberated throughout the globe. On that day, I was in Oman. I was living in Oman. And I saw some familiar numbers on that particular day. So that's the connection. Nipsey and 10-9.
Explain that connection a little bit more.
Okay, what is it? Okay, I'll explain how I saw those numbers, because that's a peculiar story. I only lived between 5 and 8 minute drive from my home in Oman to my workplace at the university. I woke up that morning and I drove to work. As I'm driving to work, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, there are no cars on the road but my car and one truck. Only one truck. What are the odds that that truck has a license plate number with familiar numbers to me? That truck cuts me off. I enter a roundabout, and that truck cuts me off. Now, I'm already sad because I learned about Nipsey's murder. Like, as soon as I got up, I checked, Instagram, and I started, looking through my feed to get updated on, the events. Because I'm thousands of miles away from Los Angeles, and I start seeing so many pictures of Nipsey, and I'm like, what happened to Nip? then I get confirmation. I read Emil Gibbs's Instagram post, and it said, "Prayers up for Nip. He was a really good dude." So that hit me in the chest, like, past tense, he's gone. So anyway, I'm distraught, man. I'm like, yo, I was just reading about Nip. Just reading about him, reading in Forbes magazine all of his successes. And I'm feeling like if he could do it, I could do it, you know? And I'm thousands of miles away from Los Angeles, so I drive to work. I'm sad. And now I'm angry because this truck just cut me off. And when I see these numbers, a calmness washes over me. Because I know those numbers are familiar to me. It's like seeing a familiar friend. But I was thousands of miles away, and it hit me. I'm like, wait a minute. Why am I seeing these numbers now? Like, Nip is on my mind, and now 10-9 is on my mind. Like, why? Why are these two things together? And then it hits me. It hits me even harder because I'm saying to myself, I've been seeing 10-9 all of these years because they've been preparing me for this moment. And here it is. Nipsey's gone. You see 10-9 in the same day, within an hour of learning that information. So that was a huge connection that led me to some other conclusions about who Nipsey was.
Okay.
Because the idea that Nipsey was just another brother from LA, that's not enough. That's not good enough. The idea that he was just a Rolling 60s Crip, that's not good enough. He was just a world famous rapper, it's not good enough. I'm taking it there, Jumani. I'm going all the way. He was the closest thing that we have come to experiencing Jesus Christ in our lifetime. This is the truth that is so important that I want to share, that no one is going to believe. But hey, I still have to try to get it across.
So you think Nipsey was the reincarnation of Christ?
I would say that Nipsey embodied Nipsey's message, was Christ-like. It was just what I said. He was the closest thing.
He was 33 when he passed, right?
33. We know those numbers. If you know the Bible, we know those numbers. 3 plus 3 is 6. And so when we start thinking about all of these little details and how they match up, this is what I was doing. Saying, well, how come 3 plus 3 equals 6? How come 6 was so important to Nipsey? Why did he have to leave us at that age? Why did I see these numbers on that day? And then, Jumani, they in French, I don't speak French, but they say the pièce de résistance, like the cherry on top, the cream of the creme de la creme, that most important point. 7 days after Nipsey's murder, I walk out of my home in Oman. I look up in the sky and I see something I've never seen before, and I can't explain why I saw it on that particular day. But the number 7 was also resonating with me, and the number 7 told me completion. So I'm like trying to connecting these dots, and I'm like, I saw 10-9 on the day Nipsey was murdered. That calmness washed over me. Maybe that's a message for me to say, hey, don't feel sad for Nipsey. He completed his mission. Try to put these ideas together. But what I saw that day, there's no way I can explain it. I've tried to explain it, but I can't.
Well, what happens when you see 109? When talk about the feeling of calm, like washing over you, but is there like something that happens for you typically when you see 109?
It used to be, I would see those numbers and I would be like, hey, that's my birthday. And for many years, that's all that it was. I remember I jumped on the train in South Korea. It was like 3 days before my birthday, and I was seated in row 10. And if you look up, you see 10 and 9. And within like 3 days, my birthday is coming, and I'm like seated in row 10. There are no other people on this train. I could have been seated in row 2, 25. Excuse me. But they seated me in 10. And I'm like, why is this happening? So for many years, I was wondering why this was happening. I would look at my watch at 10:09, at 1:09, or what have you. But when Nipsey was murdered and I saw 10:09, in the most bizarre way, there were only 2 cars on the road. Only 2 cars on the road. And I saw those numbers. It confirmed for me that I need to, synthesize, bring all of my information, all of my experiences together to draw some conclusions. So, calmness. I think of my guardian angels as if, this is a sign from my guardian angels when I see those numbers. It's not just my birthday I'm looking at anymore. These are really important numbers.
Do you still see the numbers to this day?
Sure.
Anything like recently in particular you want to share?
I was in Vegas, and I was gambling, and I was playing 10 and 9. See, when I start talking about 10 and 9, people tell me, well, hey, you need to go to Vegas and play those numbers. I had a great run. One weekend I went to Vegas. Every casino I went to, I left with more money than I went in with. I played numbers 10 and 9 on the craps table. I didn't play roulette. I played craps. I played 10 and 9 on craps, and I won. And I was winning so much that I was gambling. I was leaving one casino and I was going to have lunch, and I was like, this is the luckiest I've ever been in my life. I get off the freeway, and there's a car sitting at the light. So I decide I'm going to pull over and I'm going to wait at the light. I don't want to wait behind anyone. There's a moment I start thinking, like, I've got too much money right now. I don't want that person to see me up and say, hey, I'm going to follow that guy. So I decide to stay behind them. I stay behind them, and then I happen to look at the license plate, and there it was, 109. There weren't like 10 cars in line, and I'm looking for 109, and I'm like, where is it? No, I'm pulling off the road. There's a car sitting there, and I had a thought, go around it. And if I had followed that thought, I wouldn't have seen it. But then I said, no, get behind that car. And there it was. So yeah, I still see it.
What's the significance of 109 to you? Like,
Wait. I will say this though. Don't gamble. I went back to Vegas and I lost. 109 worked for me one time. I had an unbelievable run. I went back. It wasn't with me. So, you asked me a question though. What?
Yeah, like just if you had to summarize it real quickly, succinctly, what does 10-9 mean to you? 109. What does that mean?
Wow. It's becoming, for me, it's the universe. Because the Ankh, the Egyptian symbol, of fertility, of eternal life, I find 109 in the Ankh. For instance, if you look at that symbol, you can draw 1, you can draw 0, and then you can draw 9. 109 right in there with the cross. So we're talking about 109, we're talking about the cross, and we're talking about the day that Nipsey died. I saw 109. 7 days later, I looked into the sky and I saw a cross. 109, a cross. I'm like, it means everything. It really does.
Have you studied numerology?
I've leaned into numerology to understand, understand these things. It's funny that you asked that because I'm not a numerologist and I didn't lean into it before. But I was in Oman. I asked my colleague what he thought about my story, and he's like, Google it. And I'm like, that's a great idea. I never thought of doing that. And then Google tells me they're angel numbers. But then I check 110, 108, 107, and they're all angel numbers. So it's like I really don't know what to make of it with numerology. But I really like what the 5%ers say. Because when I see 10 and 9, that's my birthday. And the 5%ers say it's knowledge, cipher, born. So they incorporate your birth, in that number. So I'm like, I'm good. I'm good with the 5%ers.
Are you 5%?
The 5%er philosophy states that the black man is God. I'm with that. Do I practice, what the 5%ers practice? No, I'm not. I wasn't, we weren't inculcated. We weren't indoctrinated into that, And I thought the 5%ers were as far away from me as literally New York. And I was surprised to meet brothers right here in Leimert Park who are 5%ers. So everything that I'm talking about, everything that we are talking about is about, consciousness. It's about knowledge of self. It's about awareness. And if you're aware of these things that we're talking about, then I'm not speaking in a foreign language to you, But again, a lot of this is what I learned recently, So.
You mentioned knowledge, cipher, born. What's a cipher?
The cipher, I know that the cipher has two meanings. The cipher could be a shill, could be an empty vessel, like a person, a meaningless, a nothing person, a cipher. Or it could simply be a circle, right? I like that definition, the circle, the cycle of life, right? Because that is a metaphor for everything, We wake up, we go to sleep. We have a routine. That's the cycle. And, life, and then there's death. That's another cycle. And then in particular, when that car cut me off in Oman with that 10-9 license plate on Nipsey, on the day that Nipsey was murdered, I was at a roundabout. So I'm like, these things just, that cycle. It's a circle.
Have you heard of Newcomb Benford Law?
The Newcomb Benford Law. This is really interesting. Again, okay, so as we're talking about 10-9, we could lean into numerology, but I would say let's not stay there. Let's lean into statistics and probabilities. Let's lean into the science. So Newcomb Benford Law says that basically in the universe, in our world, you can find numbers that begin with the number 1 30% of the time. You can get a random set of numbers, and then you can organize them, you know, from smallest to largest, and you will find that 30% of the time, that set of numbers, or any given number in that data set, starts with the number 1. So that means that anywhere at any given time, you can find the number 1 like 30% of the time. Okay? So that meant on that day that Nipsey was murdered, I had a 30% chance of leaving my home and seeing the number 1. 30% chance. Okay. But then the question becomes, what is the you can also use the Newcomb Benford formula to figure out the probability of finding, you know, larger numbers. So I use the formula to enter the number 109 to figure out the probability of encountering that number in nature is less than 1%. So I had a less than 1% chance of walking outside of my home that day and encountering 1, 0, and 9. Less than 1%, and there were no cars on the road for me to choose which car am I going to look for. Because what happens is I don't go looking for the numbers. These numbers find me. And in that moment, I saw those numbers. And I had a less than a 1% chance of seeing those numbers. So the Newcomb Benford Law has helped me understand the probability of everything that I'm talking about. What was the probability of me, you know, waking up at 1:09 a.m. in Columbia and seeing that on the clock? It's like less than 1% chance. But it happened. It really did happen. Any of these moments, what was the probability? Less than 1% chance. So it's a miracle, man. Life is a miracle. Life is it's unbelievable. And the one thing why Nipsey is because he's a unifying force. He brings us all together. We see ourselves in him. And he was able to go the length, go the distance, because it was his mission to show us how far, you know, and what potential we have within us. And it doesn't matter. See, he left high school. It's like, come on. He leaves high school, but he's still a multi-millionaire. He's still known around the globe. He still impacts these people. I mean, that's a miracle. So there's no coincidence. It's not by accident that it was Nipsey. You know? So.
All right, man. Anything else you want to say about 109, about your journey?
Get out and travel. There's a lot of fun to be had internationally, man. I know it's difficult. I'm feeling it right now. I'm back in LA. That circle, you know. It's difficult. And the thing about this story is none of this was planned. I had no idea that this was going to happen. But it did happen, and I'm simply connecting the dots. And this is the result.
That's the result.
So.
All right, man. That's a wrap.
All right.